name is Morgan Field, and I was certified in January of 2014 from iPEC. And I'm the CEO, Chief Epic Sexy Life Officer at Epic Sexy You. And I work with women specifically to just ditch mediocrity and shed self-doubt and just fill their life with epic, endless adventures and look and feel sexy while doing it and just fall in love with themselves and create a life that they absolutely love living. So the business is Epic Sexy You, and it's all about just completely living life, not allowing a single day to go by without really just squeezing every morsel of yummy goodness out of life that you can. And it's really about ditching mediocrity and just absolutely looking for every single way that you can light all of your cylinders on fire and just be so ignited and just find your euphoric bliss. And it's really about filling your life with so many adventures that you like, just dreaming so big and then going out there and just having all of these crazy wild dreams come to life. And as a woman, right, really being in your body and being in your skin, and sexy is not at all a look, it's a feeling. And so it's about, you get both with the sexy package, right? So it's really about how do you step into a life you love living, to being a you that you love being, and into a body that you love being in and that you feel really sexy in. And one of the things too, when it comes to the niche, is every entrepreneur, every coach, they have an it factor. And so, or like the X factor, call it whatever you want. So I was thinking about that in preparation for this. And I was like, what's my it fact? You know, there are a lot of people that are coaching, you know, or that are helping you live a life that you love living. And a lot of people work with women. So what I realized is I have a very unique tribe that I work with, and they're individuals who are open to playing with some of the spiritual gifts that I have. And so in this little niche tribe that we play with, I channel through the messages that come to me, the visions that come to me from people's spirit guides, and really share that in tandem. So it becomes this really beautiful, playful experience when we're coaching. And that's really what Epic Sexy You is all about. My secret ingredient is leaning in. And I feel like this is kind of a popular thing that we hear about nowadays, that a lot of entrepreneurs are saying is a piece of their own secret sauce. And I would totally say that. There's a quote in Stephen Pressfield's book called Do the Work. And I don't know the exact quote, but it's something like, the more important that something is to your soul's calling and to your purpose and mission in life, to your true fulfillment, the more resistance that you're going to be met. So I have a pact with myself. I have an agreement with myself that if something feels terrifying, and not like, oh my God, there's a bear, run, terrifying, like not instinctual, I'm gonna die, because I'll listen to that. But if it's something that just feels really kind of scary because it's gonna stretch me, it's gonna be out of my comfort zone, I think I can't do it, I have an agreement with myself where I say yes. So to give you an example, I remember I was going to Florida, and less than 48 hours before I was there, someone was like, hey, by the way, we're all gonna do this challenge where we go to this open mic comedy show, and we are going to get on stage, and I think you should do it. And every single thing inside of me was like, that's the worst idea ever. You know, all the excuses and all the brain chatter starts coming up, and it was like, well, I can't do that, and I'm not a comedian, and, you know, I'm going to have to speak in front of people and all this stuff. And I remember, because of this pact that I have with myself, I was like, crap, you know? So I said yes. And it was an absolutely exhilarating experience, because I would rather jump out of planes or at that time, I would say, maybe probably still, I would rather jump out of planes and swim with sharks than get in front of a group of people and do stand-up. I'm not, you know, it's not my jam. So what ended up happening is I got up there and I did it, and I felt so empowered, because I genuinely think part of the secret ingredient of leaning in is doing things that you at one point thought were impossible. And that's how you can really build and sustain like the most epic momentum and confidence, is by continually doing things that blow your own mind, where you're like, I'll like hug myself or give myself high fives or, cheer, when you're doing that happy dance. So leaning in for me is definitely something that I have the utmost of commitment to and has really been a key ingredient in my success. In a nutshell, what my coach's story is, I remember being in the corporate world and I was constantly chasing happiness. I think that's something that I was probably the majority of my life, I was always chasing happiness, but I remember being in the corporate world and always thinking at the next level, that's when I'll be happy. Oh, okay, so the next pay grade, that's when I'll be happy. The next title upgrade, it was always climbing this ladder. And I got to the top and I was still unhappy. And then not only was I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't fulfilled. Like, so I knew something was missing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of money. I'm at the top of the company. Where else do I go? I'm not learning or growing as much anymore because I'm at the top. So now what? And I just remember intuitively knowing there's got to be more to life than this. Like I had given 8 years of my life. I had given, I had sacrificed my health. I had sacrificed relationships. I had sacrificed so much by being in this environment of this constant chasing of happiness and then to not have it. So I was like, there's got to be a different way. And so I stopped listening to everyone else. I started just kind of going internal and I was like, well, what do I want? Empowering myself and giving myself permission to say, what do I want? And I just kept hearing life coaching. Like I kept just, it's like when you buy a new car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, it was that same thing where it was like all of a sudden I started thinking of life coaching and then I saw it everywhere, and I would go to retreats and I'm like, what is this? They're like, it's life coaching. I'm like, wow, this is great. So I started searching for programs and hands down, the only one that would pull to me spiritually and just like pull on my heart and just tug on my strings was iPEC. And so I had no idea, which you'll keep seeing this theme here. I had no idea what I was going to do with it or what was going to be coming of it, but I just finally decided to trust myself. And again, this leading in thing, it was kind of terrifying, but I did it. And so now here I am all these years later and just absolutely loving it and still surprised every day by where the journey takes me. So my success formula, this was a good one because when I look at what it is to be successful for me and what I feel like is really important that can also allow others to have a lot of continual success in their life is I say lead it and be it. Right? So with coaching especially. So if I'm going to hire a coach, I want a coach who is right alongside me on their own journey. You're not, you can help guide. I think you can be the most effective guide if you've already been where someone has been, or it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but they're constantly growing and striving and they're doing all of these pieces. This is where that lean in and constantly challenging yourself and constantly growing and not allowing yourself to stay still. It's practicing what you preach. So one of my favorite things about coaching is the fact that, and this is part of the success formula, is the fact that you have accountability. Right? Like what better accountability than to have people that you're working with that are mirroring back to you all of the areas of opportunities that you have to grow. I mean, it's one of my absolute favorite things to do is to be constantly asking myself, I'm coaching someone on being bold. I'm like, where could I be more bold? Some of the best things that have happened to me in my life have come from getting off a call with a client and being inspired by that client's boldness or their courage or their vulnerability and going, I really got to step up, And I remember when I was leaving the corporate world, a lot of people, I could actually feel their visceral reaction around me leaving the certainty and stability and comfort of that corporate structure where it's like guaranteed paycheck and more importantly benefits. People were like, oh my gosh, you might make money, but what about the benefits? And one of the things I've realized as I've really created my own Thrive life and just a very successful business is that one of the benefits that you get in corporate world, which is, health benefits or your 401k, there's a benefit that I feel like you get in coaching that doesn't come with the corporate world, and that is the accountability, right? That is the fact that every single day you're working with people that inspire you. You're all day, every day, to lead it and be it, and make sure that you're practicing what you preach. And I think that as a coach, people can feel that. They can feel when you're being authentic. They can feel when you're genuinely stretching and growing as well. And so for me, that's just a huge part of my success. And I genuinely, so iPEC Sexy You I have to be that. I have to lead that. I don't have to, I want to. But I also do kind of have to, right? If I'm not, then who am I to be able to even to help guide people through their own journey. So it's awesome. My life is filled with tons of adventure and always making sure that I'm keeping myself accountable to stay in my body and feel sexy in my skin. And so yeah, lead it, be it is definitely a key to success for me. What drives me, and this one makes me a little emotional, is in the best way possible, and I can't talk about it without getting a little teary, is when you find happiness, you're like, oh my God, it's like the world's best kept secret. And you're like, I can't believe I didn't have this before. And I want the entire world to experience this. And I'm like, how did more people not know about this? Why aren't people talking about this? And why aren't they sharing it? And so to me, it's to share with the world ways to break through things that are keeping them from being happy, things that are weighing them down, helping them figure out how to just how to live life by their own rules and just on their own terms and just genuinely love life. I mean, life when you're happy, it's different. It's very different than when it's kind of a Groundhog Day. And I lived that for a really long time. And so what drives me is to really be able to give back to people what I found. That's what, I mean, to me, that's why it's like, and I will continue going until the day I die, whether it's books or, online programs or speaking engagements, but it's trying to touch as many lives as possible to help people find their own recipe for happiness, really is what it is. Okay. So I always play with mantras like, I give myself permission to change them as I feel pulled to a new one or as one's little juice is wearing off. So last year, my mantra was playful out, which was crazy awesome. And it led to a lot of go, 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 which I felt like was really needed in terms of building a lot of momentum. It's also why I've been able to, it was one of the keys to success in building my business as fast, that mantra, playful out. So I remember last year, I was scheduled to do a retreat in Acapulco, Mexico. I was hosting it. So I was hosting a retreat, and it was a retreat where we talk about love. And so it was like helping these women get the love that they crave. So, I mean, this was it was going to be a very, it was going to be an igniting trip, but at the same time, there was going to be a lot that was going into it. And then I was offered to go to a retreat to attend as a participant. This is the whole lead it, be it thing. I was offered to go and participate, but it was in Fiji, and it was 2 or 3 days after the retreat that I was hosting in Acapulco. So in order for me to go, I would have had to go from Chicago to Mexico, be in Mexico for, the retreat was 7 days. I stayed an extra day. I hosted, so I was worried, like, that could be a lot of energy you're giving as the host. And then I was going to get on a flight and spend 20 plus hours to go to Fiji and then do a really intensive retreat of my own in Fiji. And it was like 2 retreats back to back in Fiji that I was attending. And so I asked myself, am I playing full out if I don't go? And the answer was no, and so it's like, if I do go, am I playing full out? And the answer was yes. And sometimes I'm like, crap. So I said yes. And I was gone for an entire month. But that was what kept, it really challenged me to look at all of these limitations that I had that really were just illusions. And it's really allowed me to, it kept that momentum of playing full out up. Then at the beginning of this year, I said, okay, so what's my new mantra? I was feeling really pulled to having something different. So I felt like I'd had Playful Out down, but I also felt like if I kept Playful Out on for another year, that I might miss opportunities to be even more specific on the things that I wanted. It was like, okay, stop, pause, what do you actually want? And so one of the things that I noticed when I did a stop and pause and reevaluated my mantra was what was coming up is I kept asking myself, what do you want? And then I would have a list of reasons why I was waiting for these things. And I was like, ooh, here's an opportunity for a mantra. I'm really good at calling myself out on my BS. So I took a look at it, and the new thing that came through was, what are you waiting for? Was the new predominant question. And so make it happen became my new mantra. So at the beginning of this, so in February, as an example of what happened as a result of this new mantra, I released my book. And when I did that, I had enough books that I thought would last for pre-sales for, a month. And within 2 weeks, it was sold out, and it went to 14 countries. And by the end of the following month, it was the #1 bestseller on Amazon. So again, I think it was from that momentum of Playful Out. I had that fire already built. And then what are you waiting for? I was dragging my feet on finishing this book. It's like very vulnerable to put something out that's so raw and real. And but then these constant rewards, this goes back to leaning in, this goes back to lead it, be it. All of these pieces are kind of like this beautiful golden thread that weaves throughout the success. And so I absolutely love mantras. And then the what are you waiting for kind of ties actually in Playful Out. The energy is still there this year. Between now and the end of this year, and actually until we were prepping for this conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, it's in the next 6 months. So it's a very short time period, because for me, it was like, what are you waiting for this year specifically? So I'm doing Punta Cana in July, Sexy Camp. And then I'm doing in September, I'm doing a St. Pete Beach. I'm hosting a St. Pete Beach retreat to anchor in the foundational principles of really loving your life, and then taking a group of women to South Africa in November. And so when I thought about that, I was like, oh my gosh. And then on top of that, there are these places I want to go and I want to travel. So I'm figuring out how all the little pieces fit in. But mantras are so powerful because it's constantly looping in my head. Well, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And just make it happen, and that's like, boom, here's a book, boom, here's another retreat. And so it makes my life filled with lots of adventure. So one of the things that I had to break through, and I feel like this is universal for, I don't care, it doesn't really matter who you are or what your life is like or what you look like, how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how successful you are, how much money you have. Everyone experiences self-doubt. It's a universal human thing. And I feel like some of the biggest breakthroughs that I've experienced have come from really figuring out ways to get creative to break through that self-doubt. And again, this is where that golden thread weaves in. It's the leaning in. It's the doing things that at one point you thought were impossible. It's doing things that build confidence, that make you realize just how unstoppable you are. And that self-doubt is just this brain chatter. That's all it is. And I feel like in terms of the breakthrough, one of the most powerful breakthroughs I had was leaving the corporate world when I was the only person who could see it. And I feel like sometimes that's the thing, right? It's betting on yourself when no one else does. And it doesn't mean anyone's betting against you, although there will always be people betting against you. But it's not even about that. It's about, I can viscerally feel people's fear. And it was really hard not to take that on as my own. And also, it's like, of course, there's so many what ifs. It's a lot of unknown. And there's a lot of security and comfort in, working a full-time job, especially. I mean, I was at the top of the company. And so for me, that breakthrough really fuels me. And I always go back to it because I'm like, if I could do that and create this, what else can I do? And if I hadn't done that, I ask myself this a lot. This is so very igniting for me. I ask myself a lot, when I'm doing something, whether like when I'm on the beach hosting a retreat, or actually, it's funny enough, when I was in the corporate world, one of the things that I was sad about was we used to have a trip once a year that was like this extravagant, it was a trip you won and it was like all expense paid, this beautiful trip. We'd go to this beautiful location. And I was bummed I was going to be missing that. And now it's like I host retreats and we go 3 times a year. And so whenever I'm doing these things, I remind myself that at one point, what I was bummed I was going to miss out on are now the things that I'm creating in my own life that I would have been missing out on 3 trips, instead of waiting for once a year. And now it's like I'm creating all these things. And so there was also another opportunity that I had that I was asked to be when I started my coaching and I had built a lot of success. I was actually asked to be the director, like the actual spearheading creator and contributor for a very well-renowned individual as his international life coaching program for him. And I said no. And I said yes first, and then I thought about it, and then my heart and body wouldn't allow me to continue on that path. And so I gave myself permission to change my mind, and so I constantly remind myself of that, when I'm spending my day doing things that I love doing all day, every day, it is just a constant validation and reminder and acknowledgement that when you choose you, it always works out. When you honor that pull, when you listen to yourself. And so I feel like the breakthroughs of saying yes to you, giving yourself permission to change your mind, and always picking yourself, always choosing yourself above all else, and always being honest and very loyal and loving to yourself. I feel like what you can do, you just become unstoppable. The most valuable lesson that I can give you, I feel like you've got a lot of little golden nuggets already. And so this final piece is beware of your comfort zone. It's super sneaky. And in my own business, I've scaled, grown, scaled. Oh, you hit number 1, you do all of these things. And then you get super comfy. It becomes this thing where you're like, well, I'm already, making a lot of money. I'm already doing all these things I love doing. Why keep going? This is not a conscious thing. This is like this internal dialogue that goes on in the back of your head. And so I'd say in terms of really pay attention, being very honest with yourself, living very purposefully, consciously, and intentionally. And be careful, because one of the things I have done myself, and that I've watched a lot of the people that I work with that are entrepreneurs or coaches, when we're working on moving them forward and growing their business, I notice that it's like this tomorrow syndrome. Like, no, that's totally cool. I will step out of my comfort zone tomorrow. I get that I'm in it, but tomorrow, or like next week's a really good time, or, this one's my favorite, and I was totally guilty of this at the beginning, and I still sometimes have this pull to this, is like, oh, I'll just take like 3 months off because, I've been working for so long, I totally deserve it. And there's nothing wrong with a break at all in any way, shape, or form. It's just, you've got to be really, 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 really honest with yourself on if it's been a few months, or, it's like, how long is this really a break, or what are we avoiding, or what are we doing here? Because the comfort zone is so sneaky. It's so warm and fuzzy. It's very tricky. And I feel like when you're in that space, in that cocoon, especially when you have a lot of success, right? It's just being honest with yourself about, how long do I want to be here? And is this where I want to be? And really being very mindful to say, yes, okay, tomorrow literally is done, or start today, or, but have a deadline, have something set. Just saying, just beware of the comfort zone.